welcome back to this autumn edition of Tansson Talks. I'm always, glad to be doing the show. So today, I'm just so excited to speak to my friend here today, John. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm very excited, I said, to speak with you. And so, how's your day going thus far today?
Not too bad. It's getting into the busy part of my semester, but not bad at all. The weather's getting a little crispier and colder, so looking forward to the fall.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to make some time to chat with us today. And so, before we get started, are you able to go ahead and introduce yourself for the watching and listening audience here today?
Yeah, of course. My name is John Cho. I am currently a second year Master of Public Health student in health policy at Yale School of Public Health. I recently graduated back in 2023 from the College of William and Mary, where I studied public health and data science. And I am originally from the Hampton Roads, Virginia, and from Newport News. Um, I currently work as a Science and Data Policy Fellow for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and I am coming up about 5, 6 months now. And the year prior, I worked as a data analyst also for HHS, but in a different office.
Well, overall, as I said, John, I'm just so excited to chat with you, and I'm excited to dive into the conversation.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and so first of all, as you mentioned, that you are at your second year of study at Yale, and so first of all, how has it been, thus far in the semester? I know you said you're approaching busy season very soon.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Our program is designed so that you take a majority of your core classes, so like biostats, epi, and some of your more foundational classes, your first and second semester. So now I'm able to take a couple more classes that really pique my interest, and that are a lot more related to my area of focus and interest, which is with data analytics and public health modeling. So being able to dive in those courses has been lots of fun. Um, it has been a little difficult. I concurrently work full time, and trying to balance both has become a little bit of a struggle, but something that I am developing a lot of skills to be able to do successfully.
And in previous semesters, did you also work full time while doing your studies?
Yeah, so I my first year in my graduate program, I worked as a data analyst, and so that was also full time. And this current job started back in April when I was finishing up my first year.
And overall, have you been enjoying your job? Are you able to tell us a little bit as to what you do for your position, as much as you can say, of course?
Yeah, of course. So in my current position, I help with supporting some of the policy coordination and analysis work for my office. I am no means like a subject matter expert in any like particular area, but this fellowship has been a really great opportunity to learn how our federal like bureaucracy and systems kind of work, how policies are developed and make their way through the like government process. And it's been great to get exposure to a lot of different subject areas.
Well, that's certainly, let's say, good that you're able to have that experience, and of course, within your field, even if you're not, yet at subject matter expert yet. But I'm sure that you're at least more knowledgeable now than you were when you officially started back in April.
Yeah, I would say definitely. There's a huge learning curve, and I think for policy in general, you have to be really flexible. And for like general policy, it's a pretty fundamental like framework of understanding like funding and economics and that kind of stuff, and just applying it to different areas.
Well, overall, taking a step back, since you mentioned, of course, that it was just not that long ago when you finished your studies at the College of William and Mary, and so how has the transition been leaving your undergraduate, here within, uh, the Hampton Roads region to heading up to Yale? Was that always your trajectory, or how did that ultimately come to you figuring out what to do post bachelor's?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first piece, it was quite a huge and large transition for me because I had spent most of my life near my family, and that was a big driver for me in picking an undergraduate institution. I help out a lot with my family in terms of um, just financially and as well as just supporting my parents however I can. So it was not exactly my plan to go to a college that was or to my graduate program, which was so far away. But I think when I realized I had the opportunity to be able to study at a institution that I really looked up to and had the components of a really great graduate program that I was looking for, I decided to take that leap of faith and make the move and make that difficult choice. But I have really enjoyed my experience so far, and by no means do I think I regret that choice or anything.
Well, I'm glad that you have no regrets with your, with your choice, and of course, going back to the beginning, that in your undergraduate studies that you focus mostly on like the health sciences, and so what ultimately brought you to, to initially studying health sciences, and I know you just spoke a little bit about why you chose William and Mary, but are you able to go into a little bit more details with that?
Yeah, so I think broadly, I have always been kind of involved with and exposed to public health and medicine. I have a younger brother with Down syndrome, and both my parents are individuals with like chronic health conditions. So I've always been the one kind of helping them navigate the healthcare system. And for a large portion of my undergraduate career, I thought I wanted to go into medicine. So I kind of set myself to apply to med school and was studying for the MCAT. But as I took my first couple classes in public health and policy and looking at things on a more systems level and reforming the policies that impact um, hundreds of thousands to millions of people, that's where I found that that's where a lot of my passions I think really came from. So that's why I decided to make that shift to look at health policy. And sorry, did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, it did.
Okay.
But yeah, and so overall, for you, since you're mentioning that you wanted to to dive deeper into health. First, you're thinking maybe like in medicine, but now more in health policy. So about when in your I guess in your personal journey did you make that transition? Did it take a while for you to accept that maybe the your initial thought of study didn't really work out, but there was another way for you to dive deeper into the field, but from a different angle?
Yeah, I think it was definitely seeing those, like taking those first few classes that I was able to see the impact that you can make through policies. And I think medicine is an incredible career and something again that like I was almost set up to 100% set up to go into, but I have my aspirations looking at more population level health and systems and reforms. And I think a large portion of it was also driven by the inequities that I directly saw with my parents when I worked in EMS for a couple of years, working in hospitals. I saw inequities that I think were kind of consequential to policies that needed to be reformed. And that is what ultimately I think drove me to make that transition.
And before even entering your undergraduate career, were you working a bit into understanding a little bit of health? Because I know when we initially met, for some background for the audience tuned in, is that I know when we initially met in 2019, that I know that you were also interested in spreading awareness of of many different, of course, health conditions, and learning how to uh, yeah learn how to become better from the personal health perspective as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's something that I've always been kind of drawn to and I've always had an interest of pursuing. I really found a, I really found a great experience through the New Horizons program, which is like a technical education type program where I was able to get my EMT certification. And that was kind of when I started to gain real clinical exposure to medicine. But of course, I mentioned earlier that like I've always kind of been around public health and health systems my entire life. So I knew I wanted to go into something adjacent. And I don't think it was until I was in undergrad though, until I was really exposed to what like public health really meant and really solidified my interests.
And overall, like within your your journey, like with figuring out undergrad, outside of just your studies, what else have you been overall working on, like throughout your undergrad, whether it comes to hands-on experiences, or or just learning more about the health system overall, or even within your personal interest.
Yeah, so something that I absolutely loved about my undergraduate experience is getting to become really involved with different organizations and clubs. I was heavily involved with student government, and I saw throughout my years that there was sometimes a lack of representation for marginalized communities, and I thought that it would be a great opportunity to be able to advocate on behalf of my peers and also be able to affect more of a populate like I was saying community level change, which is something that I was really interested in. So I served in student government. I was able to get involved with a lot of other uh, experiences that gave me great leadership skills that I am able to apply to in public health and in so many other fields. I assisted with orientation as a director. I was involved with the admissions office. I also volunteered, and those experiences again were just really formidable in my undergraduate years.
And I know even when we met back at the high school level, that I know that you were very involved with leadership there as well. And so I know you just mentioned a little bit about it, of giving a representation to marginalized communities. But what does it mean to you, like, to really work towards leadership and having yourself represented within leadership, whether for just a student organization or in your case a student body as a whole, as a student government president?
Yeah, I think I find a lot of fulfillment in leadership because it allows you to connect with so many individuals and hear stories. And I think what I've seen in a lot of the leaders that I admire are individuals who are able to listen and communicate clearly and don't put themselves necessarily at the front of everything, but simply serving as a conduit to be able to facilitate systematic change and to advocate for others. So that is something that I was really passionate about. And during my like student assembly kind of era, I emphasized a lot of community-based activities and advocacy a lot. And what that meant to me is, again, putting these communities first, not being necessarily the ones to uh, have to speak on their behalf, but giving them the platform and stage to be able to give them a voice and empower them to make change.
I really like what you said just there about not necessarily you or the student assembly, per se, giving voice, but rather helping to elevate the voices of others and giving them a platform to use that. And so for those who may be tuning in, are you able to share a little bit as to the difference between you speaking out on behalf of the organizations versus elevating the organizations and the voices themselves?
Yeah, so I think a key difference is that um, using your position to uh, I think elevate the voices and give them the platform for them to speak on their behalfs and be able to advocate for change as opposed to being the one who assumes a lot of the things that these communities need or not necessarily representing them in an appropriate manner. So what I emphasize a lot is making sure that these voices are in the room, that they are included even in the first place to be a part of the decision making process. And again, not trying to represent them based on my own assumptions or what I may think that they need, but instead, going directly to the experts. And this is another like key principle of public health, community-based participatory planning and research, and just making sure that these stakeholders are directly looped in.
Well, I'm glad that these key stakeholders, are looped in, and I definitely want to ask about, your time as, student assembly president, alongside, of course, your student representative to the board of visitors there. But I did want to, I'm not sure if you're actually aware, but I know that when we met in our student leadership group of sorts, is I know that you were very focused on making sure that that we felt seen and heard as leaders, and so for me as a student leader myself, that uh, that your methods of uh, of participation have honestly helped guide me in my own journey of student leadership, and is one of the true reasons as to why I even aspired to even be a part of student government at my university. So I did want to first of all take a moment to say thank you so much for that, and for wanting to, I mean, to even hear the voices of others, but uplift them, and like you were mentioning before, truly listening to people and wanting to give feedback, encouraging others to go further, even when it's outside their comfort zone.
That's really kind of you to say, and I'm glad that I was able to help demonstrate some of those skills. And these are all things that I took away in leaders that again that I admired when I was in um, I'm blinking student-wide, citywide SCA, and looking at those kind of leadership groups, and a lot of the mentors, especially that we had, like Miss Adams, for example, were just incredible in helping shape what kind of a leader I wanted to be. So yeah, I'm interested to hear how has your participation in student government been?
Yeah, so for me, after leaving high school, I immediately joined the Student Government Association at Old Dominion University. It was interesting because I had done all of my research into it, but I wasn't sure whether I was just going to join immediately or sit out for a few months to just observe. But sure enough, I had two different amazing representatives from the student government encouraged me to join well before I even officially began at the university. But when I started, it was really interesting observing the process, and but then wanting to add additional voices to it. And so for me, I was an online student, and I really wanted to make sure that we had representation for distance learning students in student government. I know that, of course, being a university, of course, you want to emphasize the campus involvement physically, but but for many of us, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, we weren't getting the 100% same, representation on that sort of scale. And so I wanted to make sure that we were able to include those voices as well, and give our perspectives. Like for some of the things that may have gone online because of the pandemic. Well, even though of course being a campus student, it may be an inconvenience, but whereas for distance learning students, it's a great benefit that we now have access to some of those materials that we may not have. The materials were always there, the advice was always there. It's now more accessible than it was, in previous ways. And so it definitely helped, guide me there. And I was so glad to be a part of it uh, for my whole time in undergrad, and then also with our what was it, our student. Okay, what was the acronym for? It was SSLC, student. Wow, it's been a moment. What was whatever? Oh, the C, Student Leadership Council, Student Engagement
Mm.
and Enrollment Division, Student Leadership Council. Um, that one I think was the probably one of my highlights of undergrad for me, and being able to share a little bit as to yeah uh, who I am, and what I would like to see change, and what would I like to help out with, and learning more about what the university does beyond what is just advertised, like the amazing work that's going on on campus, online, and so yeah, it's been a fun journey, and definitely being able to help give voices for future online and distant learning students and even campus students.
Yeah, that's incredible here. And I think sometimes that student government leaders and associations and groups don't get as much credit as they deserve for the amount of work and advocacy and passion they put into it. So I'm sure ODU has improved so much since you've joined in through your efforts. And I will also say COVID-19 also, I think for my institution, there were a lot of changes, and that's when we also saw the power of student advocacy and the importance of having like that perspective. So yeah, that was a period of so much change and so much advocacy.
Yeah, and I will say so for you. How did that change things for you from both the student leader perspective and also, for you as a student with dealing with the pandemic, and then ultimately, what was the triggering factor for you? Deciding to run for student assembly president.
Yeah, so directly when the pandemic first started and we went into lockdown, it was the end of my freshman year, and I wasn't involved in student government yet. And I joined as the Secretary of Sustainability because I was really passionate about food insecurity as well. Um, and so that's when I got my first couple glimpses of how expansive student government was and how much more it was than just like you would think for like homecoming or planning dances, which is what I kind of had exposure to in high school. Um, but yeah, I first got involved in that position, and then the year after, I was able to join as the chief of staff to the current uh, student assembly president and vice president. And again, that's when I was able to expand a lot of my knowledge in how the university functions, how to advocate for effective change, and how to meaningfully impact how things are done. So after a year of that, I knew that I kind of wanted to maybe continue on or maybe run for president. And it really wasn't until um, I was able to get a sense of, again, how underrepresented some marginalized communities were. For example, I had a really strong emphasis on first generation and low income students, and and especially for communities of color at a predominantly white institution, I thought that representation was really important, and I wanted to prioritize and focus on those issues. So yeah, it just kind of came together, and I was really fortunate because I was able to run and then consequently serve with my best friend. So it kind of made things easier, at times a little bit more difficult, but it really was, I think, one of like a once a lifetime kind of experience that I had, and it was really incredible.
Well, I'm so glad that that you were able to run and get those different experiences, especially, yeah, of course, while dealing with your own experiences and learning, learning about the university and the population of the university, in real time, and so I'm glad that it worked out for you. And so, was there anything different from being a student assembly president than what you expected when you initially ran? And and then also, I know, of course, you were the representative for the board of visitors, but was that separate from being student assembly president? Because I know every university does that a little bit different.
Yeah, so I think my key takeaway from the experience was that there is really so much that goes into making an institutional level decision. For example, like COVID guidelines or like masking in classes and things that as a student I would have thought that it was just a couple administrators in a room making that big choice. But I think serving in that position and also being a part of the board, I was able to get more of a strategic view of all the different components and how they have to sometimes view the sustainability of the university when making these choices. And um, I found a lot of pride in a lot of passion in serving sometimes as the only student in that room and being able to add that perspective. But I will say it gave me a deeper appreciation into to how like an institution functions and how much really how much effort goes into it.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to, I mean, have your voice represented, and of course, yeah, bring the voices of, yeah, others with you as, yeah, as well. And overall, what I said for you, I know, of course, you know, you mentioned that you hadn't, you didn't really per se want to be this far away, of course, from your family now at Yale. But how was the adjustment for you now that you know, are there now within your second year? Are you still able to stay in close contact with everyone, or how was that for you personally?
Yeah, I think it was a tough transition, and I am fortunately still able to drive down. So I go every so often, and I've gotten used to the drive, so it isn't too much of a push. But I think it is so much more different now that I have to plan out, an 8 hour one way car trip down to Virginia if I ever needed to do something. Whereas before, if there was an emergency or if I needed to help out with anything with family, it would only be like a 20-minute drive. So it has been a huge transition, but it's also given me a new view into, I think, independence and how um, I am now prioritizing a lot more of my own development and being able to take opportunities that I may not have had before. And this is something that I had a deep conversation with my parents and with just kind of understanding those expectations. But I feel like now going into my second year, I do feel more well adjusted than I think can be. Um, but yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to work on some of your own personal development and still, you know, be, you know, at least within driving, just even though it's a while of driving, but nevertheless, at least not the furthest you could be. But I'm glad that you're able to prioritize some of your own goals, and so diving into that just a little bit more. So now that you have, you know, a bit more independence and that, you know, you've already completed a degree, you're working full time. Like, have your some of your priorities shifted a little bit, yeah, since then, or like what are some of the goals that you're working towards now that you may not have been as emphasized, you know, have not been emphasizing as much prior to this?
Yeah, that's a good question. In hindsight, I don't quite know if a lot has changed in terms of what I prioritize and what I've been involved with. I think I continue to try to stay busy through work, and I've had the opportunity at Yale to be involved with the free clinic here. That has been a huge commitment and huge part of my experience. So I don't know if anything has changed. I continue to, I think, really love that aspect of leadership and community service. And although I am not really involved with that aspect at Yale, I have still found other avenues to, I think, express those kinds of interests. um, and yeah, of course, like it is wildly different now working and trying to balance school. So
Well, overall, I mean, I'm glad at least that, I mean, that you're able to have these varied opportunities, and that you are, you know, that you're overall still working towards your mission, of course, in public health. And so overall, like where do you see yourself after having, you know, after finishing your master's program? How far are you into it now?
yeah, that's a great question, and one that I don't have a really good answer yet. And I hope both you and anyone else knows that it's never really too late to make a shift, and there are so many different options that you can go into. So I am hoping that once I graduate in May of 2025, so next May, I am looking at continuing to my current position, continue to gain experience in policy and I am currently looking at some doctor programs to try and uh, to gain more exposure into policy and research. And I've also considered joint programs like JD PhD or or trying to see if there's ways that I can leverage, I think, law as it relates to policy, because that's been a really interesting perspective that I've been able to see in my line of work, where attorneys are able to approach things really in like a methods driven way, and able to I don't know, be the smartest one in the room. That I think that's been really cool to see.
Well, I'm definitely am very hopeful that you're able to find a program that works for you to continue your education, but also, learning outside of that with, of course, your with your job and other opportunities that I'm sure will, continue to find you as you find them, along the way.
Thanks. Yeah, I think there is still a string of commonality where I do ultimately want to work in public service and being able to still advocate for systems level change. I think something that I have taken away from, especially being at Yale, is that there is no single path to get to that final destination, or that dream goal or career. And that there are a lot of different ways, and every unique experience, even if it isn't directly related, still gives you the skills and experience to be able to make your way forward.
Well, I really like what you're saying though, is that there's no single path, and I think that's just so, so true. Because even if you have your heart set on something and that you know where you want to go, is that sometimes things always have a way of changing or sort of pushing you to another direction, and it may be related to what you're doing. It may be completely different, but I think it's important to be able to find whatever path works for us and to be able to yeah, pursue it and meet other people along the way, and you never know where you might end up.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think sometimes taking those detours and side paths make you a better person, because you gain those experiences, like you were saying. You get to meet people, get other perspectives that you may not have otherwise. And that a huge part of my undergraduate experience was trying to rush my way through. I took summer classes to try and graduate a little early. I wanted to just get to my next step for me, which was graduate school. And at the time, I was thinking about just going into med school straight away. But I really appreciated the opportunity to get a little bit of a different perspective and different experience than what I expected. And that was really uncomfortable at first, but something that I really learned to appreciate.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to explore your options a little bit more and to not just go with whatever would, I suppose, interest your comfort zone more than the path that that you ultimately went down. Because I know even for myself, looking at some of the like decisions I make, is that sometimes the best path is not always the easiest path or the one that we think that we should go on, but rather sometimes things just come up along the way, or sometimes we just have to take that leap and explore. It doesn't always work out, but in the end of the day, at least you have new experiences to add to your resume, to add to your personal experience to build on.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, like I was saying, I feel like there's a lot of push to go like next step, next step, next step, and always know what lies ahead of you, which is good to have. It's good to set those goals, but I don't think it's as prescriptive as they should be. Um, and yeah, just allowing yourself that flexibility and that grace to be able to explore different things.
Absolutely. And I did want to ask John, so outside of just your academics and, of course, your leadership work, so what else have you been up to, over these last several years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have found a lot of joy and love in I think my friends, and be able to explore a couple like new hobbies and things that I like to do outside of like just academics and just work. So I've read quite a lot. I'm trying to get more into running, and our family recently, or not recently, but about 2 years ago, we got two corgis. So I have found lots and lots of joy and happiness spending time with them. So yeah, I think also like moving to a new city in a new state has also given me a little bit more opportunities to explore those personal things and hobbies and be able to just find out what I enjoy and my identity outside of just being always busy, like involved with work and always just helping family.
Well, I love that. I mean, that you're able to, I mean, to continue exploring new things and having fun with it as well. And so, I did want to ask: were there anything else that you wanted to bring up in this discussion that we may not have hit? Anything that you would want to add, or even questions for me at this time?
Yeah, I can't think of anything in particular. I'm just interested to hear from your. I know that you have, I think, a lot of episodes at this point of this. What have been some of your like key takeaways? What have you really took to heart from your previous guests?
Ooh, yeah, that's definitely a great question. And yeah, this current show, this is episode 88, and I had 250 before that. So yeah, quite a few episodes. But I would say some of the key takeaways, just to name a few, is that everyone has a story, and not everyone is always given the opportunity or even asked to tell their story. And I think you can tell that a little bit through even the delivery of how people share their story. Whereas you notice that some people can tell their story with ease. Usually, for those people, they are able to. I mean, they are asked this question a lot. Whereas for others, it might take a moment because truly they've never been asked. Like, to tell your side of the story. And so it's really interesting diving into it, especially as someone that studied communication. And yeah, I never really realized before, having these interviews when I started doing the interview part of the podcast in 2020 is that there's so much to explore, and every conversation is different, even with the same person sometimes. So you could speak with one person, they could be very energetic, whereas another time, if it's like a bad day, for instance, they may not carry that same energy. But yes, it's the same person, but it sort of shows the importance of just having a conversation and being able to ask questions, to be able to follow up. Um, and in terms of just some advice that I've heard, it's been so interesting hearing how people have switched directions in their life and their personal journey, or had someone that inspired them, and that one thing is what sort of pushed them in a different direction. Um, and and even for me, like my own personal rediscovery of everything, uh, doing this podcast has really helped me, I guess, shift everything almost to like my childhood dreams almost. It's like now, like when I started doing all this, I was still in high school, and I was really interested, of course, in like technology stuff. But now, like, I have sort of made a full circle. Like, I am back to like my childhood dream of teaching. I now am an adjunct instructor. I let's see, I now have a published thesis from my master's program that is in media, which is something that I've always had an interest in. And so it's interesting because I feel like every conversation helped guide me to where I am now. It's not even like all but one. It's like, no, it's like I can honestly look back at every single conversation and say, okay, so having this conversation helped show me this. And this is why I decided to focus a little bit more on this in my personal life or my academics or my job. So it's so interesting and so fascinating. It's just such a great question.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear, and I think uh, you being able to continue on with this podcast and all of your endeavors are such a great attestament to your passion, and I feel like I admire you a lot for being able to grow from these conversations, and I think that is a sign of an incredible leader to be able to listen and really take to heart what you hear from others in different perspectives. And to your first point, I think that was a really interesting point with people who may not necessarily be in interviews all the time. And I've certainly been through enough like job interviews and enough like student assembly type questionings where I've gotten comfortable. But um, I feel like individuals who may not have those opportunities or who may not have a rehearsed answer have so much they may be so much more genuine in the way that they tell their stories, which I think is more powerful than being able to give pre-scripted or something that you've already memorized.
100%. Yeah, and that's something that I think I really appreciate because I feel like for me, yeah, if you go back through the episodes, is that so many. The thing I hear so often is like, "Wow, this is my first podcast," or "I always wanted to be a guest," or "I'm a big fan," which I think is something that I probably admire the most because for a lot of people, it's really outside their comfort zones, outside of my comfort zone, definitely. But being able to sort of push yourself to have those new experiences, I think have been so beneficial because you never really know what may work out for you and what you're sort of meant to do. And so, like even for me, I think about back to even say what SEA in 2019. I don't think I would have really, be here, doing this if it wasn't even for that and for amazing fellow student leaders to greatly include yourself, that were able to push me outside my comfort zone. I've always been a very reserved introvert, and I still definitely am. Maybe not to the same extent, but having people that are willing to push you outside your comfort zone sometimes, and just like ask you like, hey, what are your thoughts, or let's do this icebreaker activity to get to know each other. And yeah, I know for me as an introvert, that's my greatest fear. It's like, oh my gosh, icebreaker activity. Like I want to sit down in my chair and just listen. But sometimes being able to add your voice to the listening and to the conversation, it really opens doors that you never thought were really possible. And it's like the possibilities are truly endless from there.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I, by nature, am also a very reserved person, and I still, after giving many presentations the past couple of years, and not the best at public speaking, nor do I get comfortable, or do I never not get like sweaty palms when I have to speak in front of people. So it's definitely something that I've grown into, and I definitely think that I would never have seen myself in these positions that I've had and am in. And it's because like taking those leaps of faith and because like you were saying, taking the unexpected choice, it really allows you to gain that experience that you wouldn't have otherwise and opens so many doors. Um, so yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so fascinating. I mean, like being able to go through it and I just really dive in to sort of like who and what makes us who we are and where we are now. And even I know we've been planning this for a while now, but even like the conversation that we had now would be different than when we originally planned it like 2 years ago. And so, how would you say actually that you have grown from the time in 2022 uh, to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I really do appreciate like having this conversation as well because it allows me to reflect on things and things that I may not necessarily give like time to think about. So I think in the past 2 years I've had a lot of growth in what leadership means to me, what it means to actually serve a community. Um, and I think I have a stronger appreciation of a lot of the smaller nuances of like policies and how decisions are made at an organizational or institutional level. And I have, I think, a little bit more knowledge than before in about how things work and what I want to do when uh, I in like 5, 10 years out.
Well, I'm glad that you've been able, I mean, to continue on your personal growth, and I hope that even 2 years from now that you're continuing that personal growth in whatever way it may, may be. And yeah, but like I said, John, I've been so enjoying this conversation, and yeah, speaking of you being able to not just catch up, but also learn more about who you are as a person. And like I said, I just hope that we're able to. I know that we will continue, to stay, connected as we both continue on our personal journeys.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much again for having me. And I am excited to continue to see how you do such amazing work and how your career progresses on too. But yeah, I appreciate it and look forward to continue being in touch and hopefully revisiting this conversation in the future to see how I've grown or how we've both grown some more.
100%. And yeah, and before we go to, I did want to first off the closing section by asking, so what does it mean for you to be able to tell your story, here on the podcast?
Yeah, so something that I kind of learned to really value is something called vulnerable leadership, um, and being able to tell one story without the limitations of avoiding emotions or how you felt, but actually telling your story how it is and allowing others to see your experience and your story a little bit more personally. I appreciate this opportunity to again reflect on how things have changed and grown for me, but also be able to give one or two nuggets of advice that I don't really have the expertise to give, but still might be able to kind of say aloud and yeah.
Yeah, and for those who are tuning in, where are the best if people want to potentially connect with you, where are the best places for them to do so and to reach out to you?
Yeah, I don't really have social media anymore, but I guess I still have my LinkedIn. You can look me up at John Cho, and I am happy to connect with folks, and I have learned a lot from previous mentors and others who are able to share their experiences, and I'm happy to pay it forward. So that probably is the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Well, that's perfect to know. And last but certainly not least, John, if you're able to go ahead and close out our episode 88, with whether it be a life lesson, inspirational thought, or whatever the case may be, the floor is all yours.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. Um, Yeah, I think just a common theme that we've been talking about for the past hour is just not being afraid to take your step forward, even if it doesn't really, if you don't know what it may entail. So, taking those leaps of faith, being able to take those unexpected choices. And what I really loved, what you said, is growing from others and learning from their perspective. So, I think those are my two takeaways from our conversations. And things that I hope to continue holding the heart.
I absolutely love that. Like I said, thank you so much, John, for for everything, and I'm just so excited to see what you're going to do both now and in the future to come.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again, Brandon. Appreciate it. And likewise to you.
Yeah, absolutely. For those tuning in, thank you so much as always for tuning into the Tansson Talks show. I always appreciate your support and continue tuning in every week as we continue on our mission to bring people together. I'll see you next time. Take care.